So today we're meeting to discuss what we have been working on over the last year with Summers West on the Braden Master Development Project. I have Mark here. He's been working as the director of construction for Summers West and really taking on some massive land development. So I'll let him introduce himself and see where we can take this thing. So Mark, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Summers West does?
Sure. My name is Mark Oliveira. I've been with the Summers West team for about 3 years now, operating as a director of land development and construction as it pertains to infrastructure. Um, what Summers West is, so we are a real estate development firm primarily operating out of Northern California with master plan communities in both California and Hawaii. And the emphasis that I've been working on is Braden, which is a master plan community that is here in Sacramento County. And that's been the primary focus of my role here at Summers West.
So for people who don't know, what is the Braden Master Development Project? Just in simple terms, how can you wrap around, really, when I first saw it, Mark, I was like, dude, this is not a master development. This is a city. You are building a city, right? Like that thing behind
Yep.
you is one phase, right? But this is a massive undertaking.
Yep. So Braden in itself, its original engineering name was Cordova Hills, and it's a 2,700 acre parcel out in Sacramento County, just outside the city limit of Rancho Cordova, if anybody's familiar with that. And essentially, it's an 8,000 unit mass planned community with 5 distinct villages, as well as a university campus, commercial corridor, and just a ton of amenities for future residents that we've been carefully curating to kind of create an experience that's pretty much unmatched in the development space that we've seen here recently, especially in Northern California.
I know looking through all of the lots and the different things, one of the things that really caught my attention was the vision of having that different kind of community to offer California with some of the housing needs and really all the different biking lanes and walking trails and things like that. And I thought that was really awesome how you guys have prioritized that. So
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very unique property. I grew up in very much an agricultural background, and so to have the proximity to some of our nature preserves and some of that being incorporated right outside of the resident's front door, as well as being walking distance to our commercial corridor. So being able to hit the gym, go to the grocery store, get a great bite to eat, and I'll do that within walking distance, and just kind of creating an integrated community where we could have kind of free range kids and free range lifestyle. Kind of bring that back into development where in most development here around here we don't see that typically, and so doing something different that I think the market's really striving for.
I think it's really just like the need for Californians in general in that area is pretty high for some really nice places to live that ultimately suit their needs. And I guess, when you look at a project like Braden where you're trying to really make the big changes that you are and develop something like that, what makes it hard to manage day to day building a project of this scale?
For a project of this scale, so just for context, just for the next 3 years of development, we have over 94 distinct program elements, and that could be anything between a study, a tentative map, a final map, a project, or a different building that we're building. So getting all these different program elements and lining them up, but all understanding all the different sequential activities that need to happen to make this happen flawlessly, and do that across multiple teams, work in multiple states, multiple offices. And so getting everybody aligned around a single source of the truth that matters and that's clear and that's relevant and is effective to managing all the moving parts and pieces that really have to come together on a daily basis is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I I remember when we were going through some of the different components of Braden and seeing how you were able to compartmentalize all of these different pieces of the puzzle to get the overall picture of how this thing's going to be laid out was really cool. And so, I think before we really started working together, how would you say you and your team were keeping track of all of that stuff on Braden?
So it was a mixture of different methods and provide some further light. So Somers West essentially operates like a startup. We have a smaller team, all coming from different backgrounds, different builders, and so everybody have a different preferred way of managing their work. But the short answer to that would be by way of standard Microsoft products like our email, Outlook, Excel, Microsoft Project, which is a great tool, but not quite as robust as we need for a project of this scale and magnitude.
Now, I remember when we first started working together, how strong you were in your vision. What stuck out to me the most, and really what I'm driving at here, is the journey to implementing a software internally within your organization is a really challenging undertaking without the proper vision. But you made it seem pretty easy to take a team that was all working in their own areas and bring it together into a cohesive vision that we're ultimately able to implement. What were some things that you used that gave you the ability to communicate with your team and keep everyone on that same vision to ultimately have a successful outcome?
I think it was by kind of establishing some guiding principles up front, and something that you and I had to constantly remind ourselves of is simplicity scales and complexity fails. And really taking that to heart and asking ourselves that question every time that we met to understand what should the next release be. And that's kind of where the beauty of the system, kind of our collaboration began, is that you had a really deep knowledge of Smartsheets, and I had a really clear vision as to what we needed to accomplish. And then you take those two skill sets together, we're able to rapidly create something that was effective and that felt simple. And luckily, with the user interface that Smartsheet deploys, it feels very much like a typical spreadsheet that most people do use in Excel. So it doesn't have a tremendous overload. In terms of adopting a new system, it just feels like a standard spreadsheet from an optics standpoint. But once you start using it and seeing all the other utilities that you can derive from it, you realize that it's so much more than that. And something that I kind of refer to a lot is one of our colleagues here who always refers to it as super smart sheets. And so I think that's a testament to somebody, especially from somebody who's does not necessarily see themselves as a tech guy or somebody who loves just integrating new tools. So I think it just speaks to the effectiveness of the collaboration and the system.
Absolutely. And I can relate to how difficult it is to kind of get all of the teammates together and be fully on board with that vision. But I think that you're absolutely right. Those are one of the best parts of Smartsheet is it is familiar enough that it doesn't feel like such a stretch to be able to make those changes that are needed to get everyone together. And with that, we talk about a lot priorities and how do you prioritize what release one is going to look like. It's really it can't be overstated the importance of making sure release one is properly prioritized so that value's delivered as quickly as possible to really get those stakeholders, get your team members engaged into this change within the organization. So what would you say we started working on first with Braden, and why was that a big priority?
So our biggest priority was schedule management. And like I had mentioned earlier, I have north of 90 separate program elements that have to be managed, and recognizing the importance of timing on all of those. So making sure that we had a robust, but simple project plan that was scalable to the entire organization, so we could follow. Keep in mind, we did design everything for Braden, but the overall theme was to make sure that was scalable so we could apply the same methodology and procedures to Nanakai, Lahui, and Shasta. These are names of other master plans that we have within the Somers West portfolio that we manage. And so again, release one was purely focused on driving a scalable solution to manage all the different schedules that we have to maintain for the project.
Yeah, Mark, just to emphasize, so Braden is, in my opinion, a city. I grew up in a small town, Addison, New York, which many people don't even know exists. They hear New York, they think New York City, right?
Right.
We had one red light, and you hear that all the time. But when I see Braden, I say, this is massive. And then when you bring out, Lanakai and the other developments you mentioned, those are also like cities. I'd say Braden's probably the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, right? But the other ones are by no means smaller, right? They're massive. And so to really capture what that looks like, there's a village, a couple of blocks, and maybe there's several hundred in Braden. And then when you look at the other cities, it's of that scale and magnitude that we're trying to manage all together. So you've got disparate tools, you've got team members that are all sort of trying to to form into a cohesive unit that have a similar vision of how this is going to go down. And you're saying that schedule part of you're not only focusing on Braden, but when you break down Braden, you actually have many smaller villages inside of it, universities, things of that nature. And not only that, but those same stakeholders and team members are really planning other cities and developments as well. So prioritizing that release, one, getting that schedule aligned across all of your team members was really sort of the most important thing. So everybody had a similar vision. We were all speaking the same language, walking in a similar direction, so that ultimately you and leadership within Summers West was able to deliver on the promises that you had made for the quarters up to the years and so on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, just keep simplicity scales, complexity fails, and also make sure that we can scale this thing up. And being able to utilize the calendar function on Smartsheet has been, a critical part of our weekly practice and how we coordinate with all the different engineers. Was, as I said, we have north of 90 different elements. And within each one of those elements, we could have an excess of 40 different contacts that we're dealing with on each element, and that combination can be different on every single one. And so making sure that we have a cohesive, simple way to consistently update progress so that everybody on this team, as well as all the executives that we report up to, have absolute clarity as to where we're at on any given point on any given project.
Next question on that I love that you brought up the calendar, because I remember that was a major light bulb moment. Since putting that in place, what really feels different at Summers West in your day-to-day work on Braden, being able to use the calendar functionality of Smartsheet versus some of the other tools you were using previously?
Well, yeah, in the past we were kind of limited to Excel, and so to get everything to line up on one thing on one sheet, you were literally building multiple schedules that were literally just X's on different rows and not necessarily intelligently connected, and having the push-pull relationships that we need with predecessors. Whereas when we standardize our project plans, and then we're able to standardize how everything rolls up into the calendar, it's really changed how we see day to day. For instance, every Monday we send out a Smartsheet PDF calendar of all the different projects that we have, status by what's in progress, what's delayed, what's coming up by engineer, and it's filtered. And so we're able to drill down to every responsible party and understand who's on what base and who might be creating the bottleneck and how we might be able to remove that bottleneck, whether it's additional resources, clarity, answers, whatever that might be. And so being able to report on 90 different elements, which all have anywhere between 30 to 300 items on there, and have that in one calendar, and to be able to see that from a yearly basis all the way down to a quarterly, down to monthly, weekly, daily, and see that week to week, it makes a huge difference for everybody.
And I think you were already using some of those methods personally as well, right? You were breaking down your daily rhythms into weekly, scaling that up monthly to quarterly. And I remember how strong some of those sort of personal habits you had already had. And so you were able to share that with your team as well, right?
Yeah. And so to be able to share that on a weekly basis was huge. Just being able to have a place where everybody knows where the information's at. It's accurate. It's dialed down to each individual responsible contributor. It's made a world of difference. Everybody knows who's on what base. It's just made a huge difference in our practice, and to be able to gain momentum when you're trying to get multiple approvals on multiple different projects. So it's just really the appropriate solution for the scale of Braden and the team that we have, being that we operate, we run on many different consultants in many different geographical areas, oftentimes on the same time zone. So to be able to consolidate that all into one area has been huge.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, or I guess just ask you, now that Smartsheet's full sort of minimal viable product, which is what you need to get it in order to solve some of the problems that you've mentioned, what's it like in your team? Is your team using it? Are they excited about it? And was it worth it?
Yeah, so it's always, I think people care about what they create. So I think I cared about it the most because it put so much energy into creating it. And I think, as with any IT rollout, it usually comes at the worst possible time because everybody's so busy. But once people have clarity on the answers that they need, and it's consistent, great things happen. So I always kind of revert back to that book that's sitting back there, The Road Less Stupid. And one of the things that Keith Cunningham says in that book is that ordinary things done consistently well produce extraordinary results. And that's kind of as it is with project management and project planning. Oftentimes the value isn't in the plan, it's in the process of planning, the mental exercise of that. So were people excited about it? Honestly, most people weren't jumping up and down, but once they started seeing the value of everybody understanding where we're at, where the bottlenecks are at, and getting the results that we needed to move us closer and closer to the finish line, I think everybody appreciates the clarity that we do have now. And so it's like everything, it's one of those things where, God, this is the worst possible time to do it. But once you start gaining the momentum and the results and the clarity, and everybody understands where things are at, it's like, why did we not start this sooner? And so that's kind of how I would describe it.
100%. That's really great to hear. I'm really happy that your team's on board and that Braden's moving forward when we relate that to really that area of California and California as a whole, as well as your other downstream customers. I think that's a huge impact, being able to deliver and so getting everybody to be able to work together and leverage that value is huge, not just for Summers West, but really everyone affected by this major sort of build out. So it's really cool to see that value and to see how much it's meant to you and your team now that you're working together. And so now we've got this sort of process pretty nailed down and this implementation. And so my biggest question really is, if someone watching this is running an infrastructure project like Braden and feels like their tools are all over the place, what advice would you give them?
Again, I think I'm going to refer back to simplicity scales and complexity fails, and the beauty in the system that we co-created and leveraged out of Smartsheet is that it is super simple, and focusing on having a single source of truth that's simple and reliable and is relatable to people, I think is huge. And start in incremental steps. You don't really want to overwhelm anybody, and so I would say know your audience as well, and know their capabilities and where they're at mentally with all their other overwhelm that they might be experiencing on their projects, and really showing them how this really does help a system accelerate their own potential.
Now, Mark, you had this crystal clear vision that we built into a roadmap and eventually started releasing other areas like Power BI. We had Smartsheet, we had GIS, and my question is, how did you prioritize getting the help versus trying to do it yourself, and finding the right players to put on your team so that you were ultimately able to achieve these outcomes?
Yeah, so I think time is money, and just understanding that, yes, I could likely do it on my own. I could do it a lot faster with the right teammates on board, and just understanding where we are at versus where we needed to be in the time frame that was there. That was the biggest reason, is that there's no shortage of information on YouTube, or especially not with AI and being able to teach. But there's certain limitations to that where you absolutely need somebody who has been through the trenches and understands the pain points and why they're so painful, and to leverage their experience to truly buy back your time. And for context, this project's been in planning for over 20 years. I came on board 3 years ago, and shortly after that, we started adding some more team members. Only a team of 3 full-time people really working on Braden itself, managing it. And so just understanding that really needing to buy back our time and introduce the right people to rapidly get us from 0 to 1. And get us to something that works, and to have minimal viable product to start gaining the momentum, so we could start layering in all the additional milestones that we have mapped out for the initiative.
I remember when I first saw that was a land development post talking about the major gap in land development project management software, and something that was a problem many people shared, and I had commented Smartsheet is a great solution, and eventually you reached out. And here we are today. Would you say that was worth your time scrolling LinkedIn and taking the chance on Skyway and me being able to join your team and help deliver this thing?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, looking back at this year, and the biggest milestones was being able to curate a team, especially working with you specifically. Like I said, Nate, when I'm talking about comments of boots on grade, and somebody who's been through the trenches, that speaks directly to your field experience and understanding the pain points. and understanding the vision and being aligned with that. And so being able to leverage your ability, your passion, your talent, and really marry it with our vision. And just it felt like it's just a great alignment. And then also with our time zone, works out well. You being where you're at and where I'm at here in California, and be able to work our kind of odd hours. So I'm still able to work in the early morning on this IT initiative while I'm managing actual field construction that's going on during the normal working business hours here in California. So without a doubt, definitely could not have done this without you, especially as it pertains to scaling it up. Yes, anybody could start a grid on Smartsheet with a few tutorial videos to be able to build something that's enterprise grade and worthy, trustworthy, and really scale. So as big as Braden is, like, again, that's just one of many master plans of the portfolio, and build something that truly is enterprise grade. Definitely, there's no way that we could have done this on my own.
Well, it was a pleasure helping you and your team. And I'll tell you that I've learned just as much, if not more, from you than you probably have from me. And so I never knew a whole lot about land development, spent a lot of time in utilities, still continue to spend a lot of time in utilities, and learning all of the different aspects of land development, and understanding that just 10 people can put together an entire city makes me drive down the road every day. And I say, we live in Florida now, and seeing all of the different development projects, it really opens my eyes and say, whoa, okay, these guys have their hands full. And so my hat's off to you guys. Skyway and myself, we're really wishing you guys the best luck. We're always here for you. And it's been quite the exciting journey, and I'm so glad that it turned out the way that it did.
Likewise, I can look forward to the continued partnership and developing this out, and just creating a solution that's really robust for my entire team and for this entire organization.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark. It was great talking with you.
Likewise.